Hey, what's up, guys? I hope you're enjoying the Be the Difference podcast. If you are, I got a huge favor to ask. Go on to Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review for us. It helps us immensely with algorithms and growth because we grow completely by word of mouth, organically. That's why there are no ads. Also, feel free to share this content with somebody you think might get value out of it. Last, if you don't know, I also do coaching to help people become the best version of themselves, starting with physical fitness, going all the way through mindset, sales, and leadership. If you're interested in learning more, there's going to be a link in the description of the podcast. You can schedule a time. It's a free assessment. All I'm going to do is have a conversation with you and see if I can even help you. I look forward to speaking to all of you. Continue to enjoy the podcast, and remember to always be the difference. What's up, everybody? It's Greg with Delta, and this is the Be the Difference podcast. This podcast is all about making you a better person in your life and in your business on coaching with sales, leadership, mindset, marketing, everything under the sun when it comes to being an entrepreneur. And we bring on guest speakers. Today, I've got the honor and pleasure of welcoming Ron Reich. Is it Reich?
Yes, it is.
Man, I got it.
You
We
did.
didn't even practice that. Yeah. Ron, how you doing, man?
I am well today. Thank you.
You're very welcome, sir. You're very welcome. I'm happy to have you on here. I think we're having a great conversation. And for those of you that don't know Ron is a passionate leadership management development subject matter expert and coach with 28 years of experience in diversified industries, an expert facilitator that believes in involving participants and clients in their learning, leading to higher engagement and quality results. He's also a voracious reader. He stays current with the latest research and philosophies, which he loves sharing with his clients. I love it. I'm also a voracious reader. I read daily.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably so. Just side note, I guess. I was in the military. I don't know how much you know about me, Ron, but I was in the military, prior veteran, and as an officer, we were encouraged to read and stay current, especially a lot of historical books, war books, leadership books, stuff like that. And I never read. I would always be like, I get someone else would read, like, hey, give me the cliff notes, right? Give me the synopsis so that I could just, and honestly, I was being lazy. And it wasn't until about 2 years ago, two and a half years ago, that I started reading. And it was very difficult for me to start because my mind was always racing, right? Like I'm always like losing track. I'm like, what did I read? And what I found is that the more that I did it, the better. It's like a muscle, like you just got better at it. And so I got better at it and got better at it. And so it was a very difficult habit for me to start, but it's the most powerful habit that I've created. And it's probably had the most impact in myself personally and professionally, is just reading every day. Yeah. It's such a powerful tool. For those of you listening, if you're not reading every day, you need to, because there's so many lessons you can learn. You can apply to your business, you can apply to your life. And it's transformational.
Yeah. I mean, Greg, I'll tell you what, right before we started, you said we could go anywhere, and let's start here, because the best piece of business advice I ever got was from an old boss working at a pharmaceutical company. And I can remember it like it was yesterday, and we're approaching 20 years now. Joe and I were talking about my raise and my bonus, and I was happy with both. And I made a comment to him, is that I so admire David, one of my colleagues. He knows so much about so many different things. And Joe just said to me, it's because David reads. And that's what you need to start doing. He said, if you want to make a difference, if you want to become a resource to people, start reading. And his recommendation to me, Greg, and it made sense to me, because like so many other people, my immediate thought was, all right, sounds good. When do I have the time? And all he said was, can you read 10 pages a day, 5 days a week?
Mhm,
I can do that, sure. Read 10 pages a day, 5 days a week, and I'll speak for myself. I read between 12 and 14 books a year. And it's just I can't say anything differently than what you mentioned before. It has made such an incredible difference to me personally, professionally, every which way, and it's a joy. I mean,
mhm,
it's given me so much confidence, and if people are challenging me and something that I'm doing is like, I'll tell you what, the research suggests something different, or just to be able to recommend books to people, just
mhm.
anything like that, you can't go wrong. You just can't.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I also I highly recommend to people that they actually physically read versus listening to an audiobook. I'm not against listening to audiobooks. I think that's also a great way. Like I do audiobooks, also have an Audible subscription, get a book a month,
Yeah.
but I still physically read every single day. There's something that's more intentional when you're physically reading, and the act of physically reading
Yes.
it actually works your mind differently. It's
Yeah.
the difference between listening, like listening to this podcast and listening to an audiobook, that's the same exact thing,
Right.
right? And the way that it translates to to your mind, and the way that the information actually is locked in. Whereas when you're reading, you are as you're reading, typically what most people happens is that you are imagining, or you're envisioning the words that are being said, and you're
Mhm.
going through those in your mind, which is working on your creativity,
Right.
and it improves your creativity, it improves your conceptualization skills, it improves your focus, it improves your ability to problem solve.
Yeah.
So it works your brain in a completely different way when you physically read versus when you listen to an audiobook. And so I always try to recommend, like, read, physically read. And it doesn't matter if it's an ebook or whatever. Like I do both, physical book. But physically read, and then as you're reading, try to take notes of things that like impact you, of
Right.
something that's said,
Okay.
highlight, take a note, write it in your notes app in your phone, something so that you can go back, and you can go back and reread those,
Right.
and you can have like your own cliff notes of a book that you read.
That's
Of
right.
And I try to take away every day. I do the same thing, 10 pages a day. That's why I started off as 10 pages a day. And when I first started, it took me like 30, 45 minutes, but now I can get through 10 pages in like 15, 20.
Right.
Because you get faster at reading, and it's a little bit easier for you. And so now I read like 15 to 20 pages a day typically, and just by reading 15, 20 pages, I can always find something that I take away.
Right.
And it's crazy how it works out. But I'm always reading a book that applies to something in my business currently. And I always learn a lesson that I can take away and I can use like within a day to like 3 days.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, and I locked that lesson in from writing my notes. And I'm
Exactly.
like, oh, you know what? And I'll literally like regurgitate it and reteach it and be like, people like, man, where'd you learn that? And I'm like, oh man, I'm reading this book, and I give them a recommendation. Like, you really should go check it out. I'm always recommending books to agents in the company, or my leaders that are within the company. Really, I try to push that as much as possible, because when it comes to the growth aspect, that's number one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, Greg, truly, we are just mirroring each other. I am one who needs to touch. I need to touch the book. I need to be looking at it. I
Mm,
need to turn the pages. I am a highlighter. And a lot of times, what I will do too, I'll just put stickies on a page where there is something that's of particular importance to me or of particular interest to me. And I really never thought about it before, and I really like what you said, and I mean that. Is that all of a sudden now I have clip notes of all these books I've read because they're marked,
mm,
and I was like, okay, there's something important here. What is it?
yeah,
And just go and reread it, refresh my mind, whatever it might be. And I have to tell you, my experience has been the exact same. Is that when I'm reading something, when I'm reading a book, I've got to say, at least 85% of the time, I'm able to apply something out of that book within a day or two.
absolutely, absolutely. And so let's jump in. Let's talk about your coaching. I know in your profile you talked a lot about emotional intelligence, which I love talking about. Have you heard about? Have you? Oh man, there's a new there's I actually just got a book about it. I haven't read it yet. I think it's positive intelligence.
I don't know it.
Okay.
Positive
And
intelligence.
it's
Okay.
like it's basically emotional intelligence with like an applicable form to it. And so more applicable steps, but I need to read the book, but there's a whole coaching program on it. But kind of speak on your coaching program. How did you even get started? How did this begin, and where is it at now, and how do you implement your coaching currently?
It's it's an interesting story, and actually very applicable for the audience as I see it. Uh, I began my career so many years ago in human resources. Long story short, I was in the banking industry, and this is back in the early mid 80s when the banks were just swallowing each other up like wildfire. Ended up getting laid off. A number of us started an HR consulting firm. I think there were five, six of us, whatever it was. We did that for a number of years and decided to shut the doors. For again, for a number of different reasons. I'm going through a nasty divorce at the time. I moved back in with my mom and dad. I didn't know what the next career was going to be for me. I liked HR. I wasn't passionate about it, and I always had this. I'm not sure even what word I'm looking for right now. I always wondered. I would love to get into training and development. I would love to do that. The guy in Dallas, Texas calls me in New Jersey in my parents' home where I was living. Wouldn't tell me how he found me. I've got a job with Toshiba that is the exact opposite of what you are. They're looking for somebody who has strong training, some HR. You've got a lot of HR and some training. I can get you in front of them because I know them very well. You need to get them to flip their competencies. So I went in and I talked with them. They flipped their competencies. I got into sales training at that time, and I have never looked back. One of the things that happened though, Greg, and this is again, I believe in staying out of the results business, and we can get into that phrase a little bit later. My point is, doing the sales training for Toshiba many years ago, copiers and faxes. Participant in a class comes up to me. I was visiting her dealership. Ron, got to tell you, the training was good. It doesn't go like that in the field, though. It doesn't. It doesn't work when you're in the field. And I was like, okay, this is a problem if that's really true. I'm going to start spending time in the field with some sales reps. And let me tell you something. Number one, the models that we were teaching those folks do work. It does go like that in the field. And number two, more importantly, what I started to learn was how important it was to have a coach and how I could help these sales reps. Where, just talking about how well did you probe on that call? It looked like you started to try to close before you even found out what their needs were. Again, just all of these different things. And Greg realizing that it made a difference.
Mhm.
And that was so important to me. I mean, at the end of the day, these reps are like, Ron, thank you. I learned so much. I got so much out of today. And the people at Toshiba recognized, and I'm so grateful to Barbara and Tony, recognized the job that I was doing. And they're like, you know what? Let's try to get you into some sales management training. You're doing beautifully with the sales training itself. And that's how things just really evolved. I got into sales management training with them. There were a couple jobs throughout, and I got into leadership and development. And I've been doing this now for close to 30 years.
That's fantastic. I love, you know, I like that you're talking about the sales training and that salesperson that comes. I was like, hey, this isn't how it actually goes in the field. And what I've realized is that 9 times out of 10, when somebody is saying, yeah, yeah, that's great, but and like that in that similar situation, they're missing the point of how information is learned. And so it's like for me, it's the three I's. It's information is gathered, so you provide that training, that information, right?
Yeah.
Next is they imitate it to mastery. So they have to do it exactly as prescribed until they become unconsciously competent at it.
Right.
And then they can imitate it, or they can, I'm sorry, innovate it, and they can make it their own. They can
Yeah.
tweak it. They can say, "I'm going to add this in. I'm going to add this in," because they become so unconsciously competent at it that they understand the ins and outs and why things are the way they are. They have a deeper understanding. The problem that most salespeople do is they think they know better. And
Right.
so they'll get the information and they'll go straight to innovation, and they'll
Right.
go straight to changing it and make it their own. Like, oh yeah, that's great, but like these aren't my words. I wouldn't say this. Doesn't matter. It doesn't. Say it just like this. Follow the script, imitate it to mastery, then you can innovate it. Then you can make changes, right? And that's usually the key piece that's missing 9 times out of 10, 9.9 times out of 10, when somebody in sales is not having success, it's because they're trying to make a change to suit them. And there's too many people that are looking at it from that perspective, that lens of like, well, this doesn't work for me. The sales wasn't created to be revolving around you personally,
Right.
right?
That's right.
And so, no, you're absolutely right. And so, what I have to do a lot of times is I do coaching with my agents, is remind them of like, hey, like break down this process. Let me see it. Let me hear you, and then and come back in. Like, hey, did you do it like this? Did you do it like this? And like, well, no, well, no, well, no. Okay, let's go back to the basics, master those, and then we're going to go forward. And that takes a level of coaching, like you're saying.
That's right.
They need to have that coaching, because
Right.
sales is very difficult. Sales is all about yourself. It's all about the individual. That's why they think they have to make those changes, right? Sales is so much about personal development because it's all on them. Their paycheck, their commissions, their bonuses, all that stuff. It's all on them. And with that being said, why would you not focus on improving every area of your life, your mental, your mindset, your skill sets, training and developing yourself on a daily basis to continue to level up so that you're better in appointments, so that you're having more sales, you're making more commissions, but that comes down to professional development. It's all those soft skills.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I mean, I think for me, the one thing that I thought about too, when you were saying is that, you need to imitate this, you need to do it this way. There also needs to be a level of trust
Yes.
between coach and, coach and sales rep, coach and coachee, whatever it is they're doing. And again, Greg, truly, I'm not blowing smoke here because Tony Codiani, director of training at Toshiba, when I was there, he said the exact same thing you did about the programs we used to facilitate. He said, here is what you will do. Here's not what I want you to do. Here's what you will do. You will do this program exactly the way it is laid out in the leader's guide
Mm,
until you have mastered it. And once you have mastered it, then you can start making some modifications. Nothing major, because if you make anything major, I want to know about it first.
yeah.
Which all made, and actually, let me back up. It didn't make sense to me at first, except he was in charge. And I was like, all right, I better listen to this guy. And now I understand completely what he was saying.
Yeah.
Now I get it.
Absolutely. And that level of trust, a lot of times it's going to come. There's a lot of ways that it can come. But the most common way is that a salesperson, when you're in a sales organization and you have a sales manager, you want to look to your sales manager that's also doing the same job or has done it at very high level and has made significant impacts within that industry. Like
Exactly.
they've made a lot of sales, they can jump on, and and that seeing is believing, and they're like, oh, well, this script doesn't work. And I'll be like, let me show you, baby bird. And
That's
I'll be like, give me the phone, and I'll do it right there verbatim in front of them. And they're like, oh man, it's that easy. Yes, it's that easy.
And it's going back. Uh, the best boss I ever had. I mentioned her first name before, Barbara. Barbara Fulmer. best boss I ever had in my career. When she joined Toshiba, and she will freely admit this, we did not get along well. And when I say we, I'm talking about the entire staff. It was ugly for the first 6, 7 months, whatever it may have been. The one thing though, because Rob, Frank, and I, there were only three of us covering the country, and we were running around like madmen. And we didn't like her, and she didn't like us right back. The one thing we used to say all the time, though, all the time, she's not doing, and she's not asking us to do anything she hasn't done herself or she's not willing to do herself. And that we had to respect.
Yeah.
And she turned out to be the best boss I ever had.
I had a general officer that I had a lot of respect for, that I worked under when I was in company command in Fort Huachuca. General Bob Ashley, Major General Bob Ashley at the time. He became Lieutenant General. I'm sorry, not Lieutenant General. I think he became a 4 star. Um, no, lieutenant. He was a lieutenant general. So he gets to a 3 star. So at the time he was a 2 star. And one of the things he taught me, and he set all these captains around where it was like all the company commanders. So it was like 15 captains in a room, and we're in his office actually. He's giving us this coaching session. And he was like, "Hey, I'm gonna give you guys a leadership secret that I've lived my life by, and it's helped me to be successful and helped me to get to this point." And he said it was something he learned from famous football coach Lou Holtz.
Yeah,
And he said, he's like, "There's 3 things that I do." He's like, "One, I treat everybody with the same exact respect, no matter what.
yeah,
Like it doesn't matter if they're the lowest private or the highest general. I talk to them the same, right? If you're going to talk to one human being one way, you're going to talk to all human beings the same way." He's like, "Two, there is no job. There is no job that I'm beyond. If I'm going to have my soldiers do it, I better be willing to do it. I don't care if it's cleaning toilets. I don't care if it's turning wrenches in the motor pool. You have to be willing to do the job, and you have to have already done it before."
that's right.
And he's like, "And then last is at the end of each day, I evaluate how well I did those first 2 things every single day." And he was like, "I'm always trying to like, and I'm realistic. I do a quick evaluation, like, hey, how did I do today? Did I actually do the things I'm supposed to be doing? And how can I get better?" He was like, "If you do those 3 things, I promise you, as a leader, you're going to succeed." And so same thing. And he was right, you know. And I've always very much of an active leader when I was in the military. Like I was the guy, like we were at motor pool Mondays doing maintenance on vehicles. I was there with the soldiers, turning wrenches and everything. And all my NCOs were like, sir, we got privates for that. And I'm like, dude, if they're doing it, if you guys are out here doing this, I'm out here with you. And they're like, you could go do some spreadsheets or like do some PowerPoint slides or something. Like you got a brief to do. And I'm like, I will do that later. I'll work a little bit extra. I don't care. I want to be out here with the soldiers, you know? So
I was fortunate. I was fortunate enough a couple of weeks ago to do four emotional breakout sessions for a client in Phoenix, and then the following day I was the keynote speaker at their national sales meeting. And the evening before the keynote, I was in the conference room. I was putting some flip charts up, just getting things ready for the next day. And some of the hotel staff were there, like, "Ron, we'll take care of this for you. Let us do it. Let us do it." And I was just like, "No, I will gladly accept your help, and I did. Thank you. I'm going to do it too. It's part of my job, and I'm glad to do it. And I have believed for my entire life, and I will believe this until I take my last breath. There is nothing that's beneath me,
yeah,
just nothing. And if I it used to drive me insane when I would hear somebody say in any job anywhere, that's not my job.
mm,
Yes, it is. I don't care what it is. Yes, it is. If it's
absolutely.
going to help the organization, yes, it is your job.
I even take it to a more extreme level now. Um, when I go anywhere, if I'm in a, especially in like an office setting, like if the toilet is dirty, I'm like wiping it up, and then I'm going back like, "Hey man, I just had to clean the toilet. You guys got to be more cognizant. Like we need to clean up after ourselves. Let's keep this place clean. Let's be professional, right?" Um, If I'm walking in the parking lot going into the grocery store and I see a random cart there, you know what I'm doing? I'm grabbing that cart and I'm bringing it up because I don't want that cart hitting my car or anyone else's. I wouldn't want it to hit my car. It doesn't matter if it's close to my car or not.
Right.
Like I'm taking it up there, right? And it's just like being exceptional with everything that you do, right? Because how you do one thing is how you do all things. So if you're willing to skirt and be like, well, that's not my job, there's so many opportunities that you're missing in your life and in your business and to help coach and really when it comes to coaching, I see it as a like a leadership thing, as like leading by example that people look at you and say, that's the way to do this. Right.
Right.
And people aren't going to want to follow you if you're cutting corners, and the people that are following you, they're going to cut corners, they're not going to have the success that you want to have, and now you're going to have a bunch of clients that are in your coaching program that they're not having success. So what does that say about your coaching program?
Right.
Right, they're a walking representation
That's right.
of your teaching, your training, your coaching, right? And if they're
Exactly.
not doing it, it's probably because you're not doing it also. Like you don't believe in it, right?
Yeah, and it's, I mean, again, that's, it's, for me, that is just spot, spot on. And yeah, a guy I have admired for many years, Rich has been my friend. He's been a mentor to me for a long, long time. Many years ago, he made a comment to me that I never forgot. He said, anytime you are doing a session, anytime you are coaching someone, you need to be on 24/7. And he went on to explain, he said, if you're doing a class, he said, what you're talking about or the activity that you're doing is important to somebody in that room. It won't be as important to everybody, it's important to somebody. And therefore, you need to be at your best every moment. And I never forgot that. You know, I was like, I need to be on at all times, whether I want to or not, whether I'm tired, whether I'm not feeling well, is that I can lay down later. I can, I can rest later. Right now, this is my job and I need to be on because people are, again, quote unquote, watching.
That's one of my so I have a talk that I do. I've done it on stage a couple times, and it's basically eight strategies for being an exceptional leader and how to change your leadership and like apply things today that can have massive ripple effects within your organization. And one of those is that you have to sell the dream even when you're living a nightmare. You have to be on and be enthusiastic and really encourage and inspire people, tap into that person because you never know who's listening. If
Right,
you It doesn't matter if you had a bad day, it doesn't matter if your finances are terrible right now, if you just got bad news about something in your family or friends or something, doesn't that doesn't matter. They don't care, right?
right,
Only you care. And you should never let bad news travel down. You can now you can shit. I'm not saying never talk about bad news, but like that's who you have like mentors with. That's who you have people to your left and to your right, people that are on the same plane as you. But when you're teaching, you're coaching, and you're trying to help people that are, I, it's weird to say like beneath, but are paying you to do coaching or are learning from you in that capacity. It doesn't matter. That stuff doesn't matter. You got to
that's
be
right.
able to flip that switch, turn it off, and sell the dream even when you're living a nightmare.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So
And that, for me too, that's also part of emotional intelligence, of knowing where I am at any given moment. Where am I right now, and where do I need to be right now? And also having a network of people, whether it is people above me, whether they're colleagues of mine, whatever it might be, to whom I can turn either afterwards or before, and just let them know, hey, I'm having a tough time. Now, I'm going to be okay. Right now, though, this is my audience. And like you said, Greg, this is what I need to deliver for them
mm,
because that's what's most important in this moment.
absolutely. Absolutely. What I like about emotional intelligence, you know, for the most part, everyone thinks about intelligence as just IQ. And your IQ is not as malleable or changeable as your EQ.
Right.
It's once you've gotten to an adult age, your IQ can't really rise very much, right? I mean, you can make small improvements, but it's not
right,
Like, that's your ability to be able to learn and retain information. Like, there's only so much that can be done. However, your EQ can change drastically with some pretty consistent effort, right? And that is a massive difference. And one of the things that I learned when I was in the military, I was an interrogator, and I ran interrogation facilities in Afghanistan. And one of the things that we did when we were in interrogation training was they always we had this one training where it was about uh, how you're perceived, like the quote "Noce te ipsum" that's in the Greek Parthenon is "Know thyself," right? And I love that quote because when it was written, I think it was Socrates that wrote it, I think, but when it was written, um, it, it it was written in a way that people misunderstand today. So people today, when you think know thyself, like know who I am and know myself and know my capabilities and blah, blah, blah. And what it was written then, it was know how you're perceived by the world around you. Because if you know how you're perceived, you can change your actions in order to get the perception that you're looking for, to get the end state that you're looking to get.
that's right.
And that boils down to, in a simple, is emotional intelligence.
Yeah,
Knowing how when you speak a certain way, or when you say certain things, or you react in certain situations, know how the people around you, what they perceive,
right.
because then if it's always a negative perception, you can change that
That's exactly it.
in order to get what you're looking to get, in order to get the end result that you're trying to get, right? And so what I learned is you we have not met in person, Ron, but I'm a large human being. I'm 6'7" and
Yeah,
about 200, and right now I'm like 230 pounds. Okay.
okay.
So I look like an NFL player, right? Like I'm a big dude. I always get, everyone's always like, dude, you play in the NFL? I'm like, no, but I'll give you an autograph anyways. So, so, um, when I was in the military, in uniform, I'm big, I'm an officer. So I have this big old captain rank on me, and I got these soldiers, and it's very much like when we talk, it's like five-finger point, hey, this is what we're doing, and just very direct. And what I learned was that because of my size and stature, and then also my deep voice, that people were very scared.
Hmm.
They took things in a fearful manner from me. And
Right.
people would be like, man, I don't want to go talk to Captain Birch because, like, he seems like an intense dude. Right.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so I learned to change the way that I spoke. And I've done it so much that I talk normally and naturally like that. So I've even I've almost lowered the octaves a little bit to where it's a little more softer when I
yeah,
speak, and that's how I'm speaking now.
yeah,
But when I when I used to speak, it was very direct like this. I was just very, very direct. Hey, this is what we're going to do, guys. And this was my normal tone of voice, and this is exactly how I spoke to every single person.
yeah.
And when I started speaking like this, a little bit softer, and I started to and I slowed down my speech, my message that I was trying to give to soldiers was received much better. And that's I mean, emotional intelligence ranges for there's so much that it encapsulates, but a lot of that is like, hey, understanding how you're perceived in the world.
Yeah. And they see, and again, for me, part of emotional intelligence also is being aware of your personality, and again, exactly what you're saying, how you're perceived. For me, Greg, one of the things I always like to do is give people a personality assessment. And my favorite one, I don't know if you know it or not, is the DISC.
I do know this. I've done this before.
Because one of the sections of the DISC is exactly what you're saying. This is how you can be perceived. This is how people can perceive you. Some of it will be flattering, some of it won't be based on the different styles.
Yeah.
And I have seen people where it's like one guy in particular I'm thinking of right now, when I showed him, this is how people may think of you. He was just like, oh my God, this is not good. And I was like, okay, except, and again, exactly what you're saying. These are learned skills. You can modify your personality, you can adapt it to your audience.
Yeah.
You need to slow down at times, you need to tone it down at times. There are other times when it's completely appropriate. to be a little bit more assertive, to be perhaps a little bit more aggressive. Again, whatever. And again, in context here,
Yeah.
and I mean, this is all about, for me, like you said before, getting to know yourself on an incredibly deep level. What are my strengths? What are my limitations? Who am I? And equally as important, what do people think of me?
Yeah. That kind of dude, that kind of self-realization is very powerful. It's very difficult. A lot of people don't do that work. And when it comes to that emotional intelligence, that's where it all stems from is the self-realization
Yes,
and understanding like who you are, right?
right,
Um, which I think is such a powerful exercise. It can take somebody, with practicing emotional intelligence, which by the way, for those of you listening, Emotional Intelligence 2.0 is a book that you can get where you can take an emotional intelligence test and it will score you. And then it'll tell you where your weak areas are and it'll tell you what chapters to read and what to practice on. It's a very applicable book with strategies. I love it. It's a great book. I did the test and I read it years ago. Um, but if you actually study emotional intelligence in yourself, this is something that you can apply to your business. It doesn't matter if you're working in a corporation, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a salary job, or if you're an entrepreneur. This is something that will help you to get to next levels
that's
by
right,
understanding these things.
that's right. Well, and you know what else is so interesting for me is that we talk about the business end of things, and all of this is applicable in personal lives as well.
Yes.
I mean, one of the nicest compliments I've gotten years ago. I did a 2 day leadership class for Sanofi Aventis, the big pharmaceutical.
Mhm.
Guy comes up to me when it was over. Ron, thank you so much. I got so much out of it. Shook hands. I said, "Oh, you're very welcome. Glad to do it." And he leaned into me and he said quietly, "It was something else too." And I had an inkling of where he was going. And I was like, "What was it?" And he just said quietly, looking around so nobody could overhear, he goes, "It was 2 days of wonderful marriage counseling." And, you laughed. And it was just like, yeah, because it's applicable for everything.
Yep.
I mean, it just is.
Absolutely. It really is. And you'll find that's why the vision and what I look to do in Delta Financial when I created it was I wanted to make better people, not better salespeople, not better insurance agents, but better people. And I want to help people in every area of their life. Because 9 times out of 10, when you have somebody that's having challenges in their business, they're probably doing the same thing in their personal lives.
Yeah,
And when you have somebody that actually is putting in the work on the relationship, on their personal life, on their mental side, their spiritual side, their physical side, and all these different areas, what's happening is all areas are rising together. And it's like a rising tide raises all ships, and their performance at work gets better. They're happier, they're healthier, they're overall, all around a better person.
exactly.
Right. And so, no, you're absolutely right. That's a good indicator for those of you that are like looking to hire. You're building a team, you're looking to hire, you're building even in a sales organization because sales is so, like I said earlier, and I mentioned, is so focused on personal development. If you try to hire somebody that has a terrible, like they're going through a divorce, not necessarily, I mean everyone's different, right? But they have a bad track record of personal relationships. you know they have a bad track record of romantic relationships. They're probably going to take those bad habits to their work also.
That's
I'm
right.
not saying don't hire them. I'm saying that this is something to be aware of,
That's
that
right.
you could help to build and grow them into a better person.
And people for me too, Greg, along those lines, it always worries me when I hear when someone will not take accountability
Mm,
for for a mistake made, or for a divorce, or just a unpleasant parting, even organizationally, and realizing, yeah, I played a part in that.
mm,
Absolutely, I played a part in that, and here's what I did. This is what I learned from it, and I won't do it again. Okay, cool. I'm good with that.
yeah.
Instead of, oh, it was my boss. My boss was terrible, and it was all her fault or his fault. Whatever it might be. where it's like, man, that scares
It
me.
does, because they're that those are the people. Yeah, every single person listening to this, every single person in the planet, you're in the situation you're in because of the decisions you made. Period.
Yeah,
You are the author of your own story.
that's right.
But there is no exception to that rule. And if you had a if you had a bad falling out with a company, a person, or whatever, you played a part in it. There are decisions that you could have done differently that could have either saved it or made the split more amicable. Period. And stop. There's no discussion there. And if you're unwilling to take accountability, that means that those same mistakes that you made, you're going to do them again because you haven't identified them.
That's right.
You haven't looked within and
Yes,
said, you know what? I did these. Now, there's probably also things that they did too, right?
yes, yes. Two-way street.
But you can't take account. You can't make them take accountability. You can only take accountability for your actions.
Right.
You're not responsible for anyone else's actions. You're only responsible for yourself.
That's right.
So no, you're absolutely right.
Completely. I mean, when I left Toshiba, the only reason I left is because I was traveling too much. I was burning out, and I mean, I had no life. I just really couldn't take it anymore. And I joined a competitor, and I'll leave the name out because it's just unnecessary. My point is, though, I knew a couple people from the competitor had joined Toshiba, and I trusted them.
Yeah.
So I went to this one guy and I was like, listen, I'm thinking about leaving and I'm thinking about going to your old company. Tell me about it. And he was like, don't do it. Don't do it. He said, first of all, the department is not that strong. The leader is not that strong. And he said, I think you're going to be making a mistake given your background. And I did it anyway. And guess what? It didn't work out well. And whose fault was that?
Yeah,
Yeah, look in the mirror, Ron, because this one's on you, bud.
absolutely. You know what? Sometimes we have to. Hey man, that stove is hot. Don't touch it. And you're like, I gotta see. I gotta see. Oh damn, it is hot. And
It
now it's
can't
just
burn
like,
that bad.
and it's just like, well, why is your hand burnt? Well, it's on me. I touched the stove. But you won't touch that stove again.
Right.
So no, that's great. I love it. So talk, you're coaching. Are you currently have like a coaching program where you coach individuals, or is that something that you do on the side, or you do full time now?
I do a lot of different things, Greg. I do individual coaching, yes. I also work with organizations. I have a future leaders program that I offer to organizations. That's been a lot of fun for me. I do leadership development. I'll do corporate training. Really, just the entire gamut uh, is what I do from a training perspective.
Fantastic. I love it. If anyone wants to learn more about your coaching program, or they heard our conversation, they're like, I really like this Ron guy. I'm digging his vibes. I want to connect with them and see what else he does. What's the best way to connect with you?
The best way to get in touch with me is through my LinkedIn page.
Okay.
And just again, it's Ron Reich, REICH, RLB, Training and Development, and there is a boatload of stuff there. There are some leadership snippets, videos that I've done. A lot of information. I'm going to be starting a leadership community within the next couple of weeks where people can get just really, really good information about leadership. And again, Greg, it's so important to me that you understand, and obviously along with the audience, is that you said before that you want to make better people, and that's what I'm all about too. I mean, it really, really is. I All I want to do is help people to get better. And if anybody wants to talk to me, I will happily do that. Do I want to work with these people? Let's be clear. Of course I do. Of course I do. It's also not going to be, oh, well, here's my sales pitch. No, let's talk it through. Let's see if we have a match. And if you decide to work together, wonderful. And if not, I still will wish you the best and I'll help you any way I can because that's who I am.
I love that. I love that. And there's nothing, man. There's nothing like when you do that, like just for an intrinsic way. Like I do. I'm starting coaching up now, but I've been coaching agents. Most agents I coach obviously are within Delta, so I get a monetary benefit just by them selling.
Yeah,
But I do help coach agents outside of my company across the industry that I get no monetary benefit, and I really do want to help agents to be better because there's too many sales agents and sales professionals in the industry that aren't having success because they don't have that access. And I know what it's like because I was there and it sucked for me. And I just happened to be the person where I was like, man, I'm going to figure this out. I'm just going to keep hitting this wall until it breaks. And I
yeah,
was fine with not quitting and continuing to put my hand on the hot stove until it didn't burn. Like it's just like I'm not quitting. And so I made a lot of mistakes and I've learned a lot. And it got to a point to where now I'm like, okay, this is how you do it, right? Like I'm
right,
starting to learn these things. So I've been through every stage, every piece of it to where, and I can articulate, hey, you want to skip this and go straight to here, and here's why, because I was here. So I can talk with an agent, see where they're at, and like, hey, I know what your problem is because I was there, man. I know what it's like.
right,
So I help to coach a lot of agents that reach out to me. So for those of you listen, you're in insurance and you haven't reached out to me, dude, reach out to me. You reach out to me on my Instagram, which is, right here at the bottom of the screen, at Gregory A. Birch underscore. I have a link on my page. You can do a one-on-one. Let's have a conversation. I've helped a lot of agents that just reach out like, hey, what do you think about this? Or how do I market to make my own leads? Or hey, how do I hone this sales pitch? I'll help you. Right. And I'm not going to pitch you. I'm not going to say, hey, why don't you come join Delta? I've never done that. Every single time that someone's joined Delta after they've had a coaching call or two coaching calls or three coaching calls, and they're like, dude, you've helped me more than anyone's ever helped me. I want to work with you. And I'm like, dude, I love that. Let's go.
yeah,
And then they join. I never do the pitch. They just tell me that they want to help or they want to be a part of it. Right. And it's very much of like the Gary V style of like provide value, provide value, provide value.
right,
And I just try to keep providing value until they're like, I want to work alongside you. Um, and I think that's important. There's nothing that's more intrinsic or just rewarding and fulfilling than being able to help somebody. Even if you get nothing out of it, you still made an impact in somebody else's life, which is going to have transcendental effects where they're going to be able to take that teaching and help somebody else and so on and so forth
that's right,
all down the line. And that there's nothing like it. There really
that's
is.
right. And my old friend Dave Beverly, the one I mentioned very early on in our show, my colleague at the One Pharma, his tagline has always been, "You never know when you are making a difference." And I believe that.
Yeah.
Dave says all the time, he goes, "It can be a smile. It can be moving a grocery cart. It can be holding the door for someone. It can be listening to someone, whatever it might be. You never know when you've made a difference in someone's life."
So true. It's so true. So Ron, thank you so much for jumping on the Be the Difference podcast. This has
Oh,
been a great conversation. I really like talking to you, man. I like lost track of time. We're just
I did too. I appreciate it, Greg. It's been
this
fun
is
to
great.
talk to you too, my friend.
This is very good. Last question I have for all my guests.
Yes.
You have the opportunity to sit, learn from, have a conversation with, break bread with three individuals, anyone in history, alive or deceased. Who would those three be and why?
Hmm.
No pressure, but it tells me the what you how you think.
I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna go with an author that I really like. I've read a bunch of his stuff. Patrick Lencioni is an author.
Yeah, he's a good one.
I
The
love him.
Advantage is a great book.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I could go on and on and on
The
and on
Advantage is
about that.
so good.
That's the book I use. That's the book I recommend for people
Yeah.
when they want to set a vision for an organization and everything else. I would love to spend time with him.
Yep.
Uh, who else? I'm trying to think. I'm a big sports fan. Who would I want to spend time with? You know who I'd love to spend time with?
Mm.
I'd love to sit down and I'd love to talk to Eli Manning. I've been a New York Giants season ticket holder for many years, and I love Eli. I always have, and he's always been a very quiet leader. And I would love to talk to him about that. And he lives here in New Jersey. My understanding is that he is just a very, very laid back, wonderful guy. Just in just in day to day stuff in his neighborhood. He drops his kids off at school, and he's just a normal dad. I would love to spend time with him. Uh, who else? Maybe Ronald Reagan. I always admired always admired him too, and just talking to him about the different aspects of his life, from the acting to getting into politics, how that happened, and how he used that to become a good leader is where I'll
Those
go.
are 3 great ones that are unique, I've never heard. I like it. I always like hearing new ones. It's great. I usually get the, "I wanna talk to Jesus Christ," which is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing,
Yeah.
okay? I'm not knocking it, but it's like, you know what? There's a whole book on everything, all about, and probably that conversation would just be spent with him asking you questions,
Right.
and like you say something and he asks you a question that gets you thinking. um, but all right, so thank you so much, Rod, for coming on the podcast. If you're listening until now, then I know you got value out of it. And if you got value, do me a favor. I need your help. Ron needs your help. Share this content, rate, review, subscribe. Make sure that you share this message. You may be having an impact with somebody, on somebody, just by sharing this content. They may pick
That's
up
right.
something about their emotional intelligence, start reading, you know, become a better leader, watch their actions daily just because you shared it. You never know. You never know. Just like Ron was saying, you never know when you might make a difference in someone else's life. And that's what this podcast is all about. This has been the Be the Difference podcast. I'm your host, Greg Birch. Until next time, we'll see you.